to all viewers of MajorTim.space's, and Happy New Year, I thought, as this is the first video of the year. That's a suitable thing to say. But actually, it's quite complicated. I'm sitting in my garden on the last evening of 2020. It looks like it's going to be a beautifully clear night. But by the time you see this, of course, it will already be the year 2021. In fact, if you're in New Zealand or Australia or large parts of the world, it's already 2021 when I'm recording this video. And the reason for that is that change in year doesn't have any real astronomical meaning. That click in the calendar from one year to the next doesn't reflect anything that's happening in the solar system or the sky around us. The real astronomical significant event this season was a week or so ago when we had the winter solstice here in the northern hemisphere, where the sun was at its most southerly point in its journey around the sky, which it does each year, and we had our shortest day. And of course those in the southern hemisphere had a nice long warm midsummer day and the sun high in their sky. But that has real meaning. I can determine the time of the winter solstice by looking at the night sky, whereas the 31st of December, midnight on the 31st, that doesn't really mean anything. You sometimes hear people say that at the point of the new year we've completed another orbit around the sun, but actually that's not true either. How you measure the length of a year is complicated, but let's just say we want a year to be the time it takes for the Earth to go round the sun once, as measured compared to the distant stars. So your view of the distant stars will be exactly the same 1 year on than it was at the beginning. Well, actually that takes a bit more than a calendar year. It takes 365 and a quarter and a bit days. And so at midnight on the 31st of December, I will be nearly, but not quite, back to where I was that time last year. I'll actually pass through the same point in space, probably while I'm asleep tomorrow morning. And so I guess you could have a big party to celebrate nearly completing one orbit, but it sort of loses its touch, and you don't want to move your party by 6 hours every day. It's as inconvenient as having to add a year to a leap year every 4 years, which is how, of course, we stop the calendar getting out of sync. So my radical proposal is that we give up on the solar year. It's too complicated and it breaks astronomical purity. And instead, I think we should all celebrate the Galactic Year. So just as the Earth goes around the sun is orbiting the centre of our galaxy, the Milky Way, along with everything else caught up in its magnificent disk with its spiral arms and its bar at the centre. We're in a great orbit around the centre of the galaxy. And we complete one of those orbits once in roughly 250 million years. So once every 250 million years, we'll be back to our same point in the galaxy, and that will really be worth celebrating. If you've survived a galactic year, you've really done something. If you think about how different the Earth must have been 250 million years ago, and if you try and imagine what it would be like in 250 million years, it's a very difficult thing to do. So we could choose to celebrate a galactic year. That would be a meaningful astronomical event, but it does make parties rather rare, and so we need to find a way really to care about normal years, and I think there is. I think I found one. I think there is one. The fact that our year is about 365 days long is a function of the fact that we're about 150 million kilometers from the sun. Kepler's laws of planetary motion tell us that the speed with which a planet goes around the sun, and therefore how long it takes to complete a whole orbit, is related to the distance from the star. And we rather like being at this distance from the sun. The Earth is the wonderful, habitable, all right, it's pretty cold right now, but it's still friendly to life. The Earth is the habitable and wonderful place to exist that it is because of our distance from the sun. If you took the Earth and wanged it out to where Jupiter and Saturn are, the atmosphere would freeze pretty quickly. If you put the Earth where Mercury is, it would boil off. And you see that in our neighbouring planets. So Venus has this runaway greenhouse effect that's led to a very thick sulphurous atmosphere. Spent a lot of time in 2020 thinking about Venus's atmosphere. It was my highlight of the year, was the discovery of phosphine, this strange chemical that on Earth is only produced by life amongst the clouds of Venus. And maybe that's the beginnings of a detection of the signs of life in Venus's atmosphere. People are still arguing about it, but just thinking about what it would be like to exist in such a different habitat makes you realise how special the Earth's position is. And Mars, of course, further out, all right, it's a smaller planet than the Earth, but it's lost its atmosphere. It's been boiled away very slowly probably by the interaction of the planet and the solar wind. So you don't have to take Earth too far out from the sun. You don't have to make our year too much longer to get to the point where Earth is no longer habitable. And we're beginning to see that finding planets where life might exist or where Earth might produce a comfortable environment, those are not necessarily, well, in fact, we now know they're not the majority of planets in the cosmos. The great excitement in astronomy, one of the great excitements in astronomy at the minute, is the discovery of planets around other stars, exoplanets. We now have nearly 5,000 catalogued systems, and for most of them we haven't been able to see the planets directly because the glare of the star's light is too strong to allow you to pick out the planet individually. And so what you do is you look for indirect means of detecting planets. And one way of doing that is to stare at a star and hope that if it's got planets, that those planets will be in exactly the right plane that, as seen from Earth, they get in front of the star once per orbit. And when that happens, the star will appear to blink. It will dim and then it will brighten again. It's called a transit. And if you think about it, because your planets are on a nice regular orbit, what you get is a nice regular series of blinks. And if you see that nice regular series of blinks, you see enough of them, you can be confident that there's a planet there. You know its orbit, and you might know the size of the planet as well by looking at the details of the transit. So this is how we find planets around other stars. If you want to have a go at it yourself, you can go to planethunters.org, where we have people sorting through data from NASA's TESS satellite, which plays this game of staring at many different stars. And of course, you're measuring the years on those planets. And I like to think that somewhere in the galaxy, there is somebody who is particularly excited about the fact that it's December the 31st or here on Earth, or that it's a new year here on Earth. And the reason for that is that there are so many stars in the galaxy. And we now know that planets are just common, that the majority of stars in the galaxy probably have planets. So what that means is that even though the odds are pretty low, somewhere out there are many systems where they're lined up in just such a way that the Earth, as it goes around the sun, will get in front of the sun as seen from that star and cause one of these blinks. We know of one such system. It's called Teegarden star. It's pretty close. But in some of those systems, they'll be lined up in just such a way that that blink caused by the Earth going in front of the sun happens at this time of year for us here on Earth. And so you'll see that repeated blink. And often when you discover these systems, you see blink, and then you see another blink, and you're beginning to be excited and confident that there's something there, but you need a third transit to be sure. And so in that case, you predict when it's going to happen and you wait eagerly for the data. So I like to think that out there, somewhere, there is an alien astronomer, an alien student astronomer maybe, who has predicted that tonight Earth will go in front of the sun. And they'll, of course, be completely unaware that this is a special night for those of us who celebrate with our normal calendar, but they will get their data, and somewhere out there in the Milky Way, it's possible that New Year's Eve will be marked by the discovery of the Earth. So I think that's rather a nice thought to take into 2021. It's going to be an amazing year astronomically, with probes arriving at Mars, with hopefully the long-awaited launch of the James Webb Space Telescope, and much more besides, as well, of course, of all the discoveries that we haven't even thought of yet. So thank you for your company. Happy New Year. See you in 2021.